Hi, my name is Elizabeth. I am a farm fellow here at RBAC and a high school student at Thomas Jefferson, Auburn, Washington, where I'll be graduating this year. Welcome to episode 4 for another amazing story from one of our farmers, Deepa. She farms at Ayeko Farm, and here's her story.
Hello, Deepa.
Hey, Narlisa. Well, welcome. We are here at Ayeko Farm. We're located in Enumclaw, Washington, so just about an hour outside of Seattle and Tacoma. This is a farm where myself, my partner Victor, our daughter Samika, and our son Devin, we live and we take care of the land. In addition to growing food, and doing different ecological restoration projects, we also host a lot of events, and educational programs.
Cool. What is your family story, and how did you become a farmer?
Well, farming is not in my family from what we know. So I'm really first generation in the United States. My parents immigrated from India. And so first generation here, first generation farmer, as far as I know. My parents always tell me that they don't know anybody in our family for many, many generations, or at all. Like, they don't have any kind of story around people who farmed. But yeah, I was born and raised in New Jersey. My parents immigrated from India in the early 70s, at the time when there weren't that many Indian immigrants in the United States. I grew up in that time that was, I say, like, assimilationist. So we were, kind of American, socialized on the American dream of coming to the United States and going to college and getting a good job and making money and being comfortable. I guess from very young, I just wasn't oriented that way. So I really, really appreciate my family, and I wouldn't be able to be doing what I'm doing if it weren't for how they've set me up and helped me. And I was just oriented more towards, like, from a very young age towards, in the 80s, it was like save the earth. Mm-hmm. That was how people talked about it. So like the ozone layer, recycling, save the earth. Well, I was very much raised up on that and very affected by it. So from the time I was really little, but even 12, I'd say, I kind of already knew my purpose. I don't think I would have said that at the time, but looking back, I knew.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't make myself do anything else. I knew I was like, yeah, I should be a doctor, I should be an engineer, all the things, and I needed to do something I believed in and that I loved, I was passionate about. And farming was not what I first got into. I was really more into environmental issues and concerns, and I actually really didn't like human beings because I felt like, as a species, I'm like, this species is not the best thing for Mother Earth. And so I was really focused on and kind of raised up in that that way of looking at environment and humans as separate. And so a lot of things I've had to unlearn or deconstruct in my process, but that's one of them. So I was really into environmental stuff, and I was like, human beings. And then, of course, started to realize that we were deeply interconnected, and got into farming because I learned that farming was the single most destructive thing that humans do on the planet. You think about all the things we do that are not good for the planet, and farming is at the top of the list. That's not good for the planet. And I'm thinking, how is it that the way we get our food, the only place we can get food is from the earth? We're not importing food from outer space yet. And the only place we can get food is from the earth, is from finding it in Earth's beautiful abundance, to just have it be available to us, and finding it or growing it. And yet growing it is actually harming the planet. And it just really, really didn't make sense to me. I felt really wrong. And also realized or felt that that was a space that I could be. I started in environmental education, and I thought, well, if I'm really wanting to support people in connecting to the land and understanding how to take care of the land, then maybe through our food is one of the most effective ways. And I also got into farming and really liked it. One of my first jobs was like weighing strawberries at a U-Picks. I grew up in a suburban area that was rural turned suburban in Jersey. For those of you who don't know, Jersey is really beautiful and has a lot of, still to this day, still a lot of like really, really good farmland that of course mostly has been suburbanized and urbanized. But we grew up in a place that was being suburbanized, and so I lived right by this big farm, and that was one of my first jobs. Got out of college and started working at a nature center in my, I went to college, moved back to Jersey, and then started working at a nature center kind of in my area. And I worked on the organic farm there, and I also was a teacher naturalist. And then I found an opportunity. I really wanted to move to California. I really wanted to live in the Bay Area. Because a lot of my friends from college were from there, but also a lot of the things that I read around like organic agriculture and holistic health, and I was really into that stuff. And a lot of it was coming out of the Bay Area.
Yep.
So I was kind of drawn to that part, and I found an opportunity at an educational ranch in the Bay Area just north of San Francisco. That was a teacher in residence. So I knew that was my destiny. When I applied, I'm like, it's my destiny, you know? And it was. You know, you get that feeling, you know, where you like see something and you're like, I have to do that. Like, I will stop at nothing. I have to do that. I don't know, you know, so I really had to do it. It changed my life to be there. Because I lived right on the coast, on a little cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and a little trailer and this ranch. And one of the most impressionable years of my life, to put me on the path of, let's say, like food systems, hands-on food systems education, which I think is where I still am, if I really had to pick one area that where I am, where engaging people in like what we're doing right now, cleaning rye seed, you know, getting rye seeds off the plant to replant. I love children, so especially working with children on harvesting food, cooking food, planting seeds, planting trees, singing, playing games, all the things that allow us to feel alive on the earth and remember that this is our source of life. So we want to take care of our source of life. It doesn't make sense not to. All the other things are distractions. You know, they're taking us away from, they're not necessary. You know, what's actually necessary is caring for the source of life and for each other. And so, but having that be a joyful thing, you know. So that's kind of how I got into that, and been doing that ever since. So since like 2000 or so.
How did you guys come across Ayeko Farms? Like, what was that like?
So Victor and I, so my partner Victor, who is the main land steward out here, the main farmer, I like to say I'm his assistant. I have my role. So I think with any, you know, farm, you know, there's a team, it's a team, and ideally it's more than two people. It's a team, it's a community effort, and there's so many different aspects to it, from caring for the land to maintaining machinery to building and repairing buildings and building whatever buildings are needed, like greenhouses and pump houses and things like that, to marketing, to actually like moving produce, to, and then our business model is, in addition to commercial production, is providing space for community to experience this, so that we can, as individuals, make choices that are healthier for the planet and each other, including the people who are the most vulnerable, that are the ones who take care of who produce our food. But also to to have a population that is sensitized, is able to mobilize on bigger issues around our systems change. So that's really like what we're trying to do on both levels. So all those things are needed, and I take care a lot of supporting on the farm, but also like a lot of the back end stuff, the marketing, occasionally posting on Instagram, writing the emails, all the bookkeeping. I mean, all of that is part of running the viability of something like this.
Yeah.
So Victor and I moved up to the Pacific Northwest to be close to my family when our daughter was about to be born, because we were living in the Bay Area and we just knew we needed family, wanted to raise the kids with extended family. And we also knew we were looking for land in California, actually, with some friends. We wanted to be in a collective process. And it was, California's tough. I love California. And the opportunities we were finding were like $2 million for a piece of dry hillside that burns and has no fertile soil. It was just like, if we wanted to be close to Oakland, which is where our community was. And it felt kind of discouraging. And then also making the decision to be near family, we said, okay, well, let's just move to the Pacific Northwest. And my sister and my parents are here, and let's start looking for land here. So came up, our daughter was born, and then we started looking right away.
Wow.
Put the little newborn in the car, drove around a lot of different places around here. And we knew we wanted to be in South King County. I was working with International Rescue Committee at the time.
Right.
And we really wanted to make the space available to communities that had either lost access to land through forced migration, settler colonialism, any of those harms that had been caused. And most of the folks of color, refugee immigrant populations, folks of color, I was encountering were in South King County, and being forced out of Seattle into South King County. And so we said, well, let's look there in South King County so folks can actually have access to the space, come out of Auburn, Kent, Federal Way, and be able to be on land that they feel comfortable. And also the other thing was, I was hearing a lot of people say, well, I love to be on the land, but I don't want to go out there because I don't feel comfortable. And I understand, because our first couple years here were very tough in that way. Yeah, so we searched for about a year. We took our time. I was feeling impatient because I knew that things were already expensive, of course, and then I knew they'd just get more and more expensive. And we really wanted to do, again, like as a collective, but we didn't really know anybody. So we said, if we take the years it takes to really build with people, we might lose the opportunity to actually buy something.
Okay.
And so we just jumped into it, we did it, and now, I can tell you more about our collective ownership process that we're working on.
Yeah.
But yeah, we looked, and we were really careful we were lucky that we had some friends that helped us understand some of the soil surveys that you can do online, the other online tools, so that instead of like going to look at land without having done some research before, we were able to look at soil types, especially out here in Enumclaw. It's not known for soils like cropping soils. It's more pasture because it's gravelly, can be really wet. So we waited until we found a sandy loam. We were looking for some kind of loamy soil that wasn't super gravelly. So we waited until we found this property, which had a sandy loam. I would only go to properties that had like the soil types I was looking for, because I knew we wanted to grow vegetables and fruit. And then also places where there weren't, lots of standing water. You're able to look at that like on map, satellite photos and stuff like that. So we did a lot of that research. We finally came out here, and when we got here, we both were like, oh, I think this is it. And we saw a lot of properties. But what we wanted was not only a home for ourselves, but a second home that we could start building that collective somebody else could live in. We wanted to be on water. a natural body of water and good soil. So yeah, when we got here, we said, okay, there's 2 houses. We're along the New Whatcom Creek, which is a salmon bearing creek, which I love to show you later on. And it has a sandy loam up top, so
That's perfect.
it was perfect. And we just, it's so beautiful. Obviously, we can see Tahoma, on a clear day, a beautiful view. And we're also, I can get to South Seattle in 45 minutes. And Enumclaw's is an interesting place. There's things I really like about it, for sure. I love being in a small town. And, there's no traffic, ever. And if there is traffic, it's 5 minutes. And you're like, God, so much traffic going across the bridge to Buckley, but it took 5 extra minutes. And so, you want to go to the store, there's no traffic. You want to, there's a pie shop. And I know the woman who owns it, it's just very, I like that. And we're really close to it's very well set up, so it's a comfortable place to live in that way. You can have access to hospital and library and all the things that you need. We're not so far out.
Yeah.
And if I need to go to the Indian grocery store and get my specific spice mixes, whatever I need that I can't grow, it's not that far.
How far is it?
Well, I used to go to East Kent, 25-30 minutes.
East Kent, yep.
Now
That's
they put it, there's a lot of Indians moved into Maple Valley and now Black Diamond.
Yeah.
So now there's 2 Indian grocery stores in Black Diamond, which are 15 minutes away.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I'm
everywhere. Yep.
Totally
it's so
set
accessible.
up now.
It's just you can go anywhere from Enumclaw.
Yeah.
That's the same way I kind of feel about Skyway or Burien. Kind of these Seattle, but it's on the outskirts and they're next to all the freeways. You can get to the mall, you can get to downtown, you can get to all the different places just by being just very central.
Very central.
Yeah.
Community-wise, my fantasy would be that more folks that I'm connected to or feel like I can connect with live out here. So small town life, imagine if I ran into you when I was at the grocery store. And then you're like, hey, I'm making this thing, come over for dinner.
Yeah.
And then, it's hey, tomorrow, let's go for a swim. And, so that's the one thing about out here is we haven't really, we have a lot of community in the area in general, mostly with Seattle, Tacoma, not so much right here. And so, yeah, little by little, that's something I love to build. I think I can be friends with anybody, because friendship is a lot deeper than, what you think about this or that, but it feels a little hard when it feels like people are oriented really differently in terms of values and things like that. But, yeah.
There's Sacred Land Collective that's near you.
Yes.
Yeah. Are those your homies?
Totally. Yes. Shout out to Baba and Omi and Lexi. Very grateful. When I heard they were moving in, I was...
Recently? Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, it's probably already been 2 years.
After BLM?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I was overjoyed. And then we've been, so there's Faith Beyond.
Faith Beyond Farm, yep.
Francis down the street. There's Mina.
Mina.
Right here.
Yeah.
There's another family. So we've been trying to have these little community dinners. It's been over the summer, has not happened, but we had 2 or 3 before the summer hit. It was so fun. We had one out here and all these kids running around and all of us just having dinner together and I like that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the way, for me, that's the way I feel like I want life to be, on the land together, outside, making food together, doing the things that need to happen, but we're having fun because we're singing or talking while we're doing it. So it doesn't feel hard. It doesn't feel burdensome to anybody.
What should people know about your culture?
That's a good question. I would say that I'm bicultural. Being raised by a family that, immigrated from India, South India, we're Tamil. And raised in a community in Jersey of mostly Tamil families. That was our family friends on the weekends, but of course going to public school and maybe not having almost any other kids like us in our school. So in a lot of ways, I lived like these two realities, like I think many people do that grow up here, biculturally at least. And so I think, because also, I give thanks for, the Civil Rights Act, which allowed for our immigration, because we weren't really allowed to immigrate before that. And so always really understanding that any orientation towards social justice really comes on the shoulders of Black and Indigenous movements on this land that have come before us. And of course, learning more about our people on our continent, our land, motherlands, and movements there that we need to learn from. But here specifically, just really remembering that we have learned, we are making gains because of what people before us have done here and have had to suffer through and work towards. So I guess I say I'm really careful when I speak about being a person of color, because I think it's very important to be careful about that. And did I forget why I'm saying that to you? You asked me something else.
You said your culture.
Oh, my culture. Yeah. So, being raised biculturally, and at that time there weren't a lot of Indians. Hard to imagine, because there's so many now in Jersey and other parts of the country. But I when I talk about it with my parents, it was like, well, we didn't want you to stand out. We didn't want you to have an accent. We didn't want you to be different. We wanted you to be as American as you could. So we didn't learn our mother tongue very well. We didn't, there wasn't like this, we must hold on to who we are. It was like, let's let go of that as much as we can so that we can be as American as we can. And so I definitely was into every TV show growing up, every rock band, every whatever, I was so American in that way. And was really try to distance myself from identifying with my mother culture. And then kind of hit a point, late teens, early 20s, where I'm like, whoa, what's happening? I think part of it was realizing that my grandparents, I didn't have much of a relationship with them, but they were these amazing people. I needed to really learn who they were. And so I started writing to my grandfather and trying to go to India and spend time. And I would spend time with my relatives and sit in the kitchen, because it was very traditional in terms of women doing the cooking there. So sit with the women in the kitchen on a little stool, help them if I could, and then be okay, and then write stuff down, or take my I had a tape recorder, and I would be can I interview you, or and most of my family, they can sing beautifully, so
wow.
I'd be can you sing me this song, and then I record them, and then and they'd be don't show anybody else, and I'd go to them and be listen to what I have to go find my cassettes, because it's so I was really in a soul, I think I still am in a searching, and probably always will be, and I think that's part of this farming journey too for me, is what is my relationship to land and to food, and how do I know that, how did my ancestors relate to land and to food and medicine and spiritual practice and all of these things that feel related. And so for me, what are the songs that are sung on such and such a time? Why is it important to planet the moon and these phases? So wanting to push that way of understanding and farming as much as possible. It feels really slow, because I'm not able to learn from someone. I'm kind of the person where you could give me, I love to read, but if you're here's an instruction manual, I'll be eh. But if you're here, let me walk you through it, I'm going to absorb everything.
Yeah.
Because I'm very I process verbally. I learn a lot through relationship.
Yeah, in real life.
Yeah. I find it a little harder, and I can do it, but it takes more patience. And so I would love, how amazing if I had elders who I'm oh, why do you flick your wrist like that when you're tossing seed instead of that? And it's oh, but all those are the levels of technique, oh, well, why, you know, why should we harvest this leaf at this time and then process it this way? And it's like, oh, we're getting maximum like medicinal benefit from this food, or, you know, that knowledge is all there in all of us and all of our people. And I think it's really critical knowledge, but kind of have to figure it out on our own in a lot of ways, because I mean, there's a lot of literature out there again, but it's like, then I have to like read it and then like try it out and then be like, and you don't know what you're reading. You're like, who, this person could be totally making, you don't know, you know? So it's like, and because it's not in my lineage, you know, it's it feels harder. So I think, yeah, just trying to be more in that journey. Yeah, so I guess all that to say that I don't, in some ways, my culture is really a mix of many things, and I'm really, really appreciative of the things that I do know about and I'm connected to with my mother culture, which is, again, like Tamil, South Indian, which I think, and then my family, you know, so we're really, I was raised to, like, you know, you don't waste anything. You know, my grandmother, she used to sew cloth bags out of like old sheets and curtains, you know, when the cloth would wear out, she would like cut out pieces and cloth bags and go to the market. She didn't waste a thing. I remember one time when I was cutting fruit and I was peeling the skin off of something, and my grandfather's, and there's like that much, you know, and he's like, you're wasting fruit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? You know, okay, let me try to do it more carefully, and everything. I mean, she didn't waste anything. And very disciplined, very, very disciplined about, I'd say, like, our internal environment, you know, like we have, I think we have kind of a, it's in our lineage to have a connection to spiritual practice. So I think that has come more easily to me, where it's like, oh, I've noticed things where it's like, this is how you clean. We're very into like cleanliness, so this is how hygiene, like, you know, especially growing up in places where you really, really have to be really mindful of that. But like, how do you care for yourself, your body, mind, and spirit? And so, like, you know, they say like mental flossing, like you have to, it's daily. You have to clean, flossing. You know.
I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, I had some elders, you know, in my community growing up that would say that, and it's daily practice. Like you really, it is daily, every day, to track what's happening internally and clean things out and just keep reorienting. Our brain is going to constantly be throwing things, and then you're like, where did that thought come from? You know, what is that? And it's like, oh, okay, let me just be aware of that. And then I want to guide myself back to what it is I actually want flowing through me. And for me, where I've come to is an immense gratitude for life. So anytime I'm like, what do I want to flow through me right now? Or if I feel like ungrounded, it's like, well, I'm grateful for life. I don't really understand it. I don't know what I'm doing here, or like, because I don't have a religious belief to guide me in that way, or I have chosen not to. But I am grateful for life. I'm grateful to the earth. And I believe that all of us are the principle of life, just like in different formations, which I think comes from like my cultural, that is like the legacy of one of the ways I interpret the philosophical texts that I've read and the teachings that I've been to. So, and I think that informs everything I do. And so, you know, mindful now, it's like people talk about mindfulness. So that is, I think, a practice, really important practice. And I feel like, you know, imagine if we were all striving towards mindfulness, not perfection and like, you know, I had a bad thought, or I did this wrong, or what, you know, some mindfulness, love towards self, which will immediately mean love towards others. And if we were mindful, then like, would we be tossing plastic in the ocean? Like, probably not. If we were mindful, if we were like, wow, what I need to be happy is like right here. If my basic needs are met, I have food, water, shelter, safety, community, you know, whatever, those basic things. I don't need to consume all these other things. I don't need to exploit someone else's labor to have excess to eat. I don't need to be eating meat 3 times a day. It's not good for the animals, not good for my body. It's not good for what we have to do to grow food to feed those animals. I mean, that whole system is harm to the people who are working in it, to the animals themselves, to the earth itself, I believe. We add mindfulness, and not to like pick on meat as a thing, I'm saying even with anything, like, why does fake food coloring have to be individually wrapped in plastic? Like, you think about, like, I don't know, like jelly straws that just appeared in, I'm just like, well, what is this? Literally, jelly straws to me epitomizes
Evil.
I am like, you just put a bunch of freak ass shit and some coloring in a little tube, and you sold it to our children, who have now completely lost the ability to understand what real food is.
Because they want jelly straw.
Because they want freaking that, like, and add that to the list of the 100 million other things, which what is wealth gain for a few. And the people that are actually making the jelly straws ain't making any money. Their health is at risk, their children's health is at risk, and yet the folks who run those companies are wealthy and are connected, all the things, right? And so, there's that combination.
Start wrapping up. I'm sorry, run out of battery.
Battery?
Oh,
okay.
And I still want to save
You get me
this
talking?
battery
Okay,
for
yeah.
when we're doing like
You're
the
good.
walk and talk.
What are you most proud of farming? Or growing?
Proud of growing. Well, I like to say soil. I think that's the thing. I mean, there's nothing else, right? If you don't have a strong soil, you have very limited time for anything else. I like to get better in growing our soil. We are working with a lot of different cover crops, vetch, 3 or 4 different kinds of clover, peas, bell beans. So we work with a number of nitrogen fixers that are going to add nitrogen to the soil. We also work with things like the rye that we're processing right now, which of course, the seed we'll use to replant. And the way we use the rye is because it has a lot of bunchy, massive roots, and it grows a lot of green materials. It can be chopped and laid down and then biodegrade, and that adds organic material to the soil in the way that, like our Great Plains in the United States. The reason why there were, I'm going to say the wrong number, somewhere between 20 and 60 feet, not inches, feet of topsoil, is because of millennia of grass growing and dying, grass growing and dying, grass growing and dying. So we have depleted like 90%. I'm totally making up numbers. I can't remember any of them right now. But something like where you think about in 150 years of intensive farming has depleted what took millennia to build. But the way it built was growing grass. Animals come, eat it, so the bison herds and all that, eat poop. And then the grass grows and dies, and grass grows and dies, and it actually builds feet and feet and feet of topsoil. Really rich soil. And that's our, our bread basket, our corn and soy basket, if you will, of the United States. So yeah, we want to get better at growing soil, but I think that's the thing I'm most proud of. I'm really proud of how much diversity we have on our farm. So we grow lots of different food crops, which I love. Of course, I love our raspberries. I love our strawberries. I love our gangura leaf, which is roselle or sour leaf we call gangura. That's a cultural food. I love the corn that we grow. We grow a lot of winter squash that I love. But I also am really excited to show you the restoration project down by the creek, but we're also putting in about an acre of pollinator hedgerow up here. So that includes, 20 different, at least, species of native plants that attract pollinators that will be here permanently. So that's like part of the entire vision, of healing.
Yeah, you're growing the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Because it's like, the plants that give back to the soil, the plants for pollinators, the space for people. You know, like I feel like Ayeko Farm has much more of like an emphasis on that, more than any other farm that we've ever, you know, known or engaged with. So, the ecosystem.
Yeah, I like that. We got to re-strengthen our relationships and bonds. I feel happier when I love insects and bees and seeing all of that. I love to see a lot of different things in the environment. So birds, yeah. I think that's the way it was before the settler colonizers came to this area, deforested, really tore a lot of things down.
Question is, farming is more than just growing food. What more is it to you?
I think it's a way of life. I think it's very tough, and I think one of the reasons that we're able to do the type of holistic ecological work is because we own our land in the private property capitalist system. For folks, because you can't own land, I believe. I do think the earth laughs at us when we're like, you don't own me. Y'all are silly. I can blow you away in 5 seconds, so stop saying that you own me. But in that system that we've fakely created, we do own it, and we're very lucky because I think that it takes the pressure that we have to keep coming up with something to sell. When you're a leaseholder, how do you pay your lease? How do you make a living off of that? You can't be. I mean, you could be like, oh, I'm having a class or something like that. There's other ways maybe, but what is if you invest in planting trees or perennials or in the soil, someone's going to take it away from you, and everything you invested is gone. You have absolutely nothing, and so there really is no incentive for people. Not that you can't farm in an ecological way, and I think a lot of the farmers you're talking to do the best that they can in the situation that they're in. But if you're like, I don't know if I'm going to be here next year, you're going to get what you can and leave. And I think that says it all right there. The way that the system pressurizes us. So I think we're really lucky to be able to do a lot of that that holistic work, because we're building for us, but we're building for the 7 generations, and putting this land into that permanently is the vision. But I think it's a way of life, because when this isn't something where you're like, okay, I'm done for the day. It's like you could work all day on all the other things, and then you come in and there's like 5 things that you harvested that need to get processed. So, but it's cool. Yesterday, my daughter wanted to watch Back to the Future 2, and we had harvested a bunch of beets. And I'm like, okay, let's watch a movie. So I'm going to be there chopping beets, because we're going to pickle them, because if I don't chop them, they're going to go to waste. But also we need the food in the winter, and why buy stuff if we can, grow it and preserve it. So it's a way of life. I think about, especially our younger daughter. Our son's 20, so he's kind of doing his own thing a little bit now. But he did, have to come into this during his adolescence. And for her, she's like, these other kids, and like, whatever, go to vacation in Hawaii, and it's also like what kind of money people have, but like the lifestyle's different, right? It's like, on the weekends you're like chilling, you're doing your chores around the house, maybe you go play soccer, I don't know, but that's just not how our lifestyle is during the summer. It's like 6 to 8 months of like, what are we doing? We're going outside and pulling weeds, we're harvesting food, we're preparing for market, our sales, we're so we're now processing food. Oh, you want to? No, sorry, got to mow the lawn.
Yeah.
Oh, now we have an event. So it's seasonal, in that way, but it's very intense, and it's a way of life. And I think to help children who are growing up around people who aren't living that way, and even myself, to be like, oh wow, yeah, I'm not going to see you. I'm not going to come see. If you want to see me, come to the farm. But I'll be there, like November through March. I'm gonna come see you. I want to get off the farm those months, but the other months, like, if you want to see me, you kind of gotta come.
How do we support the next generation of growers? Well, I'm also just like reflecting on like RBAC and like the Seeds of Change work that you've been, such a pivotal part of like stewarding and like redirecting kind of how we're talking about like engaging youth in the food system. If you're caring about farmers, like, you know more than anybody, right? But yeah, in plain words, maybe, what would you say to the next generation of growers?
Oh man, it's tough. I feel for people who are trying to come up now and trying to find opportunities that feel uplifting to them, and feel like, it's where they want to be, because I think people are seeing through capitalism in a way where it's like it's not uplifting to have to exploit the land and exploit labor in order to grow food for people, or do what you love, or farm. It doesn't feel good, and I think people know that. And so what I would say is, like, go with that feeling, and it's because we're on the wrong track, I think. We've gone too far down the food as a commodity, within the capitalist system, and I think the folks that are seeing through that, thank you. And there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of precedent for doing things differently, so the young people don't have to reinvent. But I do think it has to be kind of like what I was saying about, like, figuring out my culture. Like, you kind of have to do some research. You have to talk to people. How can we do things differently? If you want to get on land but you don't own it, well, like, how can you collectivize that? How can it be, okay, then let's get 10 of us together. And a lot of people are doing that, so people don't have to feel like it's impossible. It is doable. It's not easy, because we have not been raised up in collective culture in the United States. We've been raised up in individualized culture. How do you then become able to be in collective spaces, truly collective spaces? And so I think that culture shift is an essential part of it. And finding people who are able to mentor in that way. And I always say, like, I think young folks are, like, way ahead of us, because are so much smarter, more educated, and able to see through things more quickly. But I think then, how do you build the skills? You're going to need someone who knows how to keep circle. You're going to need to really dive deep on the communication and what it means to be in collective. And then I think really answer some hard questions around, like, what do we need to survive? Like, what is it that we really need? And are we willing to give certain things up to be able to achieve that dream of living right by the earth and by each other? And so those are the things that really come to mind. I think, like, there's plenty of opportunities to continue doing things the way they are. You can join an apprenticeship, you can get a job on a farm, you can do all the things. There's plenty of opportunity to do that. But if we are looking to shift, and I believe a lot of people coming in are looking to shift, then it is going to require building what we want to see.
That's beautiful. Well, I don't want to take up too much of Messiah's battery. So I'll just say, like, for any last words that you have, or, for the people that are interested or want to support this work in whatever ways they can, how can they find you? How can they, have a call to action to share?
We're very excited to have people out here, so people can find us through your videos. They can find us online, website, Instagram, and best thing is to come out and be alongside us. Come out for the work day. Just say, hey, I want to come out and help out, and then start learning. Let's start being in relationship and reciprocity, and then everything will flow from there.
Thank you, Deepa. This was such an amazing, fruitful, so insightful, so radical, revolutionary time spent with you. Thank you for sharing your story and all of your passions. Yeah, I'm just so grateful, and I have some things for you in the car. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for asking me and listening to everything I have to say. I feel heard. So, thank you.
We see Deepa's love for nature and being a part of her great movements for giving back to Mother Earth. But we also get to see Deepa's relationship with her surrounding communities. And she shows us how these connections were able to help her come to where she is right now. So hold on close to the people around you, especially your local farmers. And stay tuned to our next episode. I promise you, you don't want to miss this one. guys, that was me. Stay tuned. Bye bye.